firstly, Ben, I said on Sunday at the news conference in front of Cher Shamayim Synagogue, a synagogue that my late grandparents helped build in the 30s and 40s, that a threshold of decency has been crossed. And this threshold of decency is something that's very, very important. It's important because what I've said, and I've said this many times, anti-Semitism isn't just a Jewish problem. It's a Canadian problem. Yeah. And we have to take it seriously, and we have to have concrete measures to address it and to work collaboratively with all levels of government, because we can't let this fester.
Well, and what do you make then of, at almost 5 a.m., somebody deciding that they are going to try to shoot up probably the most hardened target in the city of Toronto, the U.S. consulate? I don't think any gun can do damage to that building, but it's what it represents. This is a whole other kettle of fish. These are the Americans are our friends, our allies. For whatever people think of Donald Trump, that has been the fact in the past, and it will continue to be so. But for the sake of that relationship, it feels to me we have to go over and above here. We have to make sure that all forces of intelligence and policing are brought to bear on this problem.
Well, it's absolutely disgusting that a shooting would take place at the U.S. consulate. Ben, right after I was at the Cher Shamayim news conference on Sunday, I went down to speak in front of 25,000 people that were right in front of the U.S. consulate on Sunday, calling and pleading for democracy in Iran. And I said, let freedom reign. So when we see a shooting take place at the U.S. consulate, it's completely unacceptable. I did speak with Chief Demkew earlier today, and Toronto Police is investigating the matter. This is my police service. I'm an MPP in Toronto. I'm very grateful for the work they do every day to keep us safe. And then I also want to mention, just an hour ago, I spoke to President Trump's special envoy to combat anti-Semitism, Rabbi Ambassador Yehuda Kaplan, and we talked about the threat that, left unchecked, will continue to disrupt our world order.
Yeah.
So I am troubled with what happened at the U.S. consulate. I know Toronto Police will do everything that they can to get to the bottom of it, but it goes back to the world we're living in. We can't let this threshold be crossed.
But Mr. Kerzner, do we not think that for the sake of getting this right, it may require bringing in not just the Toronto Police, who are stretched thin as is, but to bring in the RCMP, to bring in CSIS, to bring in the OPP? I mean, look, we saw how many different police organizations rescued 23 fishers off an ice floe a couple of days ago. Surely this rises to that level.
100%, and that's exactly why on this past Sunday I met with Minister Anandan Sangari, the Minister of Public Safety for all of Canada, and absolutely the OPP, I'm the minister responsible for the OPP, is cooperating, is availing themselves all the time to work with other police services and jurisdiction in Toronto. We have also the RCMP that are working on the instructions of Minister Anandan Sangari, and provincially, Ben, we are going to leave no stone unturned. We're going to do what it takes to find these people who thought it was okay to shoot up the synagogues, to shoot up the U.S. consulate, and put them behind bars where they belong. And we're going to throw the strongest element of the law at them.
Well, we have to take the world. We're going to look at it today. There's no sense in looking back and saying we could have done this, we could have done that. Although I've been strongly advocating for being more heavy-handed with the anti-Western. I don't even think they're protesters or agitators. I do believe that they are deliberately trying to sow chaos. I think some of them were naive to think that they were part of a social justice movement. And I think what we're waking up to here is this is far more nefarious than that. And the goals are not to liberate a people, but to take down a way of life. And I believe that with all my heart. And we have laws on the books, Mr. Kerzner. We've got laws that say that you can't have your face covered in public. But it's there black on white. You know, when the protesters took over Mount Sinai Hospital, made it impossible to get into Mount Sinai Hospital. We had a law in the books that says you're not allowed doing that, and yet nothing happened. How can we get our police to use the powers that they have to let these people know that the behavior that we've tolerated for so long will no longer be tolerated?
Well, firstly, Ben, we introduced in the fall sitting, which we'll be debating just in a couple of weeks, Bill 75. And one of the things in my fall justice piece of legislation goes for something you just spoke about. Why should somebody have the right to block access to a hospital? Yeah. So I'm finally going to address this so that we have what we call barrier-free access to places of key infrastructure, to synagogues and to houses of worship, because time has come that people should not have a right indiscriminately to block access for everybody that just wants to go about their everyday life. Yeah. But we have been advocating for the federal government to address what is the definition of a hate crime. They introduced Bill C9. C9 is a committee, and they've got to move forward with it, because that would help allow the police to understand that when they make an arrest, on the enforcement side, on the prosecution side, that somebody would have to pay the price for committing a hate crime, and I support moving that forward. There's other measures that the federal government has done, but provincially, we're going to do more. We're going to do it faster. I want to speak to you for just a second and your listeners about the whole concept of security guards and the roles that they play. You know, it's been over 20 years before somebody has kind of dusted off the file. We've done it now. We're looking to rescoping what is the role of a private security guard to keep people safe. We have to revisit not who is going to be a police officer, because that is very important. Police officers are incredible people, but what is the training, the standardized training for a security guard? So we're going to work with the police associations very closely, with the Ontario Association of Chiefs of Police, and we're going to look at that, and we're going to continue to provide resources that will be available, and the Premier will speak about this in the weeks ahead, so that all houses of worship, and especially in the Jewish community, Ben, that you know I'm a proud member of, can feel safe when we go to pray.
But then, you know, I've heard stories from the Deputy Mayor of Toronto, Mike Cole, James Pasternak, who's a city councillor as well, said that they've both repeatedly written to Ottawa saying we don't have what we need to take care of this rising tide of anti-Semitism. And they've both said that they've either heard, what they've heard back has been unsatisfactory, or it's been silence. And so, again, there's a lot of politicians out there, and my listeners will know who I'm talking about, who love the words. They love, oh, this anti-Semitism has no place in Canada. This is not who we are. But unless they back it up with action that's got teeth, it's not only going to stay where it is, but it's going to take deeper and deeper roots. And with every passing day, it's harder and harder to rip those things out.
Yeah, look, I was there. I was there when Mike Cole spoke. I don't agree with him that the province is silent. We're not. The government led by Premier Ford is very active. You know, we can point to so many things. The investments that we've made to allow a hate crime unit to expand in Toronto. We look at the monies that we provide to, your first question was about getting more guns off the street, because that's a problem. Yeah. But it really goes to the tone. Everybody in society, Ben, and especially here in our province, has a role to play too. I encourage people that if they've seen anything with regards to what happened at the 3 synagogues, if they saw anything with regards to the U.S. consulate, call Crime Stoppers, call your police. In fact, the police division is next to the U.S. consulate. We as a society have a role also to stand up for one another. I'm not blaming any level of government. I'm going to lead. Premier Ford's going to lead. We're going to do what we need to do. This Thursday, we'll be meeting with the ambassador from Israel to Canada and the consul general, who I know both of them very well, Ben. We're going to continue to be constructive, and we will, take it from me, make sure that if anybody thinks this is okay, it's not. Yeah. You will be caught. You will be placed behind bars, and Ben, I've got room for people.